The radical, fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody, welcome to Yaron Brook Show on this Friday, March 21st. I hope everybody is having a good week. Ready for the weekend? I kind of am, but this is my worry, right? Today, top of the news, Heathrow is shut down. The airport is just shut down. There's a fire in in the electric station close by, and Heathrow just lost electricity. No backup systems, no rerouting, lost electricity. Thousands of flights had to be rerouted. And the thing is this, I take off for Heathrow tomorrow, so I'm a little worried about my weekend. Now they say electricity's back now, flights are getting back slowly on schedule, but will the mess be cleared up by the time I have to be there? I do not know. I hope so. I really, really do hope so. It's going to be interesting. But I am flying tomorrow to the UK, to Heathrow, to do a series of talks there, and we will go from there. We'll see. Today on the show, we'll be talking about the JFK assassination. Really, really interesting things about who it turned out really, really, really assassinated JFK. You'll be stunned to know. Department of Education, it really does look like Trump will do it. He's doing it. He's eliminating the Department of Education slowly, steadily. It still requires Congress, but at least to the extent that the executive can do it, he is indeed doing it. And we'll talk about more deportation, immigration challenges, deportation, immigration challenges in the United States. Not easy to get here, not easy to come in, not easy even if you're a tourist or just coming on vacation. People are probably questioning whether they want to come to the United States right now, given the state of our borders and the aggressive nature of our ICE and border authorities. We'll talk about RFK's latest nuttiness. Just the latest. Yeah. Trump beating down an American law firm. Talk about that. That's kind of interesting. Swamp. Talk about swamp. Swamp. We'll really get into the swamp in this one. Bird flu. Some observations about bird flu and the kind of RFK, bird flu, RFK, but maybe we should do bird flu with RFK. Yeah, that makes more sense in terms of the order. We'll talk about NATO, the future of NATO, kind of a European plan coming together around NATO. And then finally, we'll talk about some interesting stuff out of Hungary, Orban. Orban's insanity, nuttiness. We'll talk about that. I mean, really, it's not about Hungary. It's about how the right is really the left. The left is not the right, but the right is the left. How the right's economic policy are basically the left's economic policy, and there's no difference between them. All right, so I'll just remind you that you can ask questions. The questions are great because it's an opportunity for you to kind of shape the program, shape what I talk about. I answer all questions. So anything you're curious about, anything you're interested in, anything you'd like me to talk about, challenge me, question me, bring it on in the super chat, not in the chat, in the super chat. So use the feature. It's a great YouTube feature. Use it to ask questions and support the show. Jonathan has already done a sticker to get us going. So you can also use a sticker to support the show if you'd rather not ask a question. All right, so I don't think you listen to the news, right? The whole point is you watch your Yaron Brook show so you don't have to listen to the news. So let me just note that the Trump administration fulfilled one of its promises, which is to release all the JFK files, all the secret files that prove that the CIA killed JFK. RFK has been waiting for this with a bated breath. He is convinced that his uncle was killed not by who we think, but by some devious conspiracy. Anyway, hundreds of pages of old, files that have been kept secret all these years. I have no idea. Well, I know why. Well, I'll tell you in a minute why they've been kept secret, but they were released. And guess who killed RFK? JFK. RFK is still alive. Who killed JFK? Well, if you really interested, you can go on Twitter and you can scan the Twitter responses. The thoughtful, investigative journalism that is happening on Twitter, and people have really analyzed these new documents and really looked carefully and read through it and found the kind of other connections and connected the dots and figured this out. The answer is to who killed JFK is, well, if you know Twitter, you know the answer. The Jews. Of course, it's the Jews. I mean, it's the Jews using Israel and Jewish CIA agents who really have mixed alliance with Israel, but it's basically the Jews. It's pretty stunning to see this online. Repeated by numerous people and retweeted. And of course, now it's all garbage and it's all made up stuff and it's all complete and utter nonsense. But it just doesn't fail. They never fail. They never fail to live up to their, very low standards. Any challenge, any problem, anything that is going out there in the world that is inexplicable, that we don't really have a good explanation of. How could it be that an individual killed JFK? That can't be. It must be. I mean, why would somebody do that? There must be a deeper reason. I can't remember. JFK was going to do something to the Jews. He was going to do something to Israel. Israel needed him eliminated. So they did. It is the Jews. So whenever you've got a conspiracy, whenever you've got something going on in the world that you just don't understand, then the answer is always the same. The Jews did it. So from now on, every time you ask me a question about something tough going on in the world that is hard to kind of really comprehend, you don't even have to ask the question. The answer is the Jews. I mean, that's it. Why have the JFK files been, in a sense, not released for decades? Because there's nothing there. So the conclusion, at the end of the day, of everybody reasonable who's looked at the files is they don't teach us anything new about who killed JFK. We know who killed JFK. There's no conspiracy here. There's nothing new. The only thing that's worth hiding that has been evident in this release of information is the fact that if you read the files carefully, what you discover is that the CIA was pretty incompetent. Just a lot of loose ends, a lot of drop balls, a lot of erased tapes, a lot of conversations that were recorded, a lot of stuff that's it shows incompetence. And I think that's why, at the end of the day, because the conspiracy theories always had this point of, well, if it's so obvious who killed JFK, why don't they release the files? It's 60 years now? What's to hide? And really what's to hide is that they were incompetent back then and they're probably not that much better anymore, even today. The CIA is just not a super competent entity. Certainly, yeah, lots of examples of that. But when you read some of the passages in the files, they just seem to have dropped the ball. They could have, potentially prevented this. They had him under observation, and they didn't. They missed. They screwed up. They screwed up just like before 9/11. Easily preventable. They screwed up. Our intelligence agencies screwed up. And here, they're just a lot of concretes and they're names of people who probably would rather it not be disclosed that they're the ones who screwed up. So that's about it. That's all the reason why it was held up. There's no conspiracy. There's no, maybe it could be that ultimately the commies, the Cubans, the Soviets were behind it all, but there's no evidence of that. So for all intents and purposes, he was killed by God, I can't even believe I'm going to say this, a lone gunman. And what was it, his brother, Robert, wasn't he killed by a Palestinian? There's another Jewish connection, right? It's the Jews sent the Palestinians to kill Robert F. Kennedy. Something like that. There's a whole thing. All right, just wanted to get that out of the way, just in case you were really, really, really curious what new information came out with the release of all these new documents regarding JFK. I'm still waiting for the full disclosure of the Epstein files, Jeffrey Epstein, that Trump promised. That one has the potential to be more interesting and more relevant. Although, again, I doubt if there's anything really outrageous there, they won't release them. So I doubt we're going to see anything new. Nothing really outrageous came out in the trial of, I forget her name, his assistant / mistress. So I'm very skeptical about there's anything in these files that is that revealing about what people did or didn't do on the famous island. All right, over the last couple of days, President Trump has signed executive orders basically dismantling the Department of Education as a department. It still officially exists to a large extent because Congress would have to eliminate it to literally get it off, to literally get it, the budget item and everything else off. Congress would have to eliminate it. And I think there are some moves in Congress to at least put together a bill to eliminate the Department of Education, and we'll see whether they can get enough votes to pass it. But most of its functions have been either eliminated or shrunk significantly, so they'll be ineffective. And in the case of student loans, which I think is one of the worst things that the government does vis-a-vis education, because it keeps its hand in, basically now it has at its beck and call every single educational institution that accepts government loans, and that's pretty much everybody. Those are not going to be done away with, as I would like. That would save a lot of money too. Just do away with student loans. Give it back to the banks. Give it back to the financial industry to handle. Government doesn't have to subsidize student loans. The subsidies of student loans have only caused a dramatic increase in tuition. So the student loan program is alive and well, and is moving, according to the latest executive order, to the Small Business Administration. I guess student loans to students are like loans to businesses or something like that. Anyway, they have the capacity to monitor these loans and to execute on them. Again, government should not be giving out loans to anybody. Anybody. The special needs program and the nutrition program, which I guess the Department of Education is responsible for, I guess, funding lunches at schools and special needs programs. All of those will be handed to our incredibly rational and reasonable and level-headed RFK, Department of Health and Human Services. So RFK will be responsible for all of this. the idea behind all this is to shift the responsibility for education, to empower states and local communities to take responsibility for government education. So that government education is not, as a consequence of dismantling much of this program, a lot of the kind of federal mandates, a lot of the federal programs that dictate education will disappear. Now, whether they can disappear without an act of Congress, I don't know. What exactly this implies in terms of a lot of these functions still going to be around, just smaller, hard to tell. But this is at least a signal that the Department of Education is going to be very, very, very weak, and that it's up to the states now. And really, conservatives are talking about that this is a state issue. Now, the reality is that it's not a state issue. The reality is that this is a parent issue. And while we should all celebrate the demise, the death, and I don't think it's a death yet, but the decline, the demise, the shrinking of the Department of Education at the federal level, that is step one, and that is a good step. That is just a step one in a battle that has to engage with now 50 state educational departments. All of those need to be eliminated. And ultimately, public education or government education as we know it needs to be eliminated. We need to bring market forces, market competition, market incentives to education. And until we do, we'll continue to get kind of the rotten educational results that we're getting. I mean, kids can't read, they can't do math. Scores in decline. While they're not hugely better in private schools, they are better. And once you actually get all the resources that the public schools have shifted over to real competition in private education, quality will increase dramatically. Dramatically. All right. So we talked about the deportation of Venezuelans who emigrated here. Venezuelans who came here seeking asylum. Almost all of them are asylum seekers. By the way, legally, asylum seeker legally, and the fact that some of them are gang members. There are Venezuelan. There was a Venezuelan gang in the United States, so we talked about the fact that. 1 second. Let me just. What am I doing here? That ICE rounded up a bunch of them, put them on 2 planes, and shipped them not to Venezuela, which is bad enough, but to El Salvador, to a prison in El Salvador, to be there for at least a year, but maybe longer, based on I don't know whose criteria. No due process, no assumption of guilt, none of them. So, and the fact seems like a number of those people who were rounded up by ICE were indeed not gang members. So at least from reports as they are coming in right now, it looks like at least 15 of the 137, it's more than 10%, 15 of the 137 people sent to Salvadorian prison, after being arrested under the Enemy Alien Act, were not gang members. Many of them were asylum seekers who fled Maduro's socialist dictatorship, I guess only to be abused by Trump's, I don't know what you want to call it, and sent to Bukele's prison camps. I mean, It's just horrific and really, really, really outrageous. Now, ICE is arresting people left and right. In the early weeks of the Trump administration, deportations numbers were not high enough. So I think Trump has yelled at them and insisted that they do more. So the solution to that is to round up more people and, care less about whether they're really illegal, whether they're criminals, whether they're, let's just round people up and then we can report and deport them, and then we can report better numbers. It turns out the number of people that are being rounded up are citizens or legal residents. One example of a guy, Julio Noriega, 54, who is a U.S. citizen. He was arrested, handcuffed, spent the night at an ICE processing center, and nobody asked him if he was a citizen. And he had to hand over his wallet. His wallet included a driver's license and, luckily for him, a Social Security card. And only the next morning, when they looked through his wallet, found the Social Security card, ran it through the system, discovered he was an immigrant, did they release him? In other words, in America today, yesterday we did a show about are we heading towards dictatorship? In America today, people in the streets are being rounded up. I think it's fair to say, basically, based on their skin color, rounded up, assumed to be guilty before innocent, so locked up until they're reviewed. And yeah, if they discover that they're a citizen, they get out. But what if you are not carrying your Social Security card? How are you going to prove that you're a citizen? Will they let you make a phone call before they usher you on the plane to a Bukele prison or to just a random country for deportation? I mean, there's something really, really, really fascist and authoritarian and disgusting about what ICE is doing. And this is the thing. I really don't think that American people care. I really don't think people care. They're so inculcated with the nonsense about immigration, about immigrants. They're so convinced that immigration is bad, that immigrants are bad. I saw so many comments about, okay, so inconvenienced a little bit. This is exactly the attitude before fascism or communism or any kind of authoritarianism rises. So liberty's infringed a little bit. But we need to get rid of those immigrants. Immigrants who are 90+% of them are working. 90+% of them are not criminals. In general, immigrants whose criminality is lower than that of U.S. citizens. Immigrants that are not doing any of you harm, not violating anybody's rights. Yes, if we have to round up the gang members, we have to round up a few innocent people just to get rid of the gang. That's okay. Well, what about when this comes to domestically? What about if they will round up a few gang members and a few American citizens get caught up in the loop? Tough collateral damage. It's kind of sad. So, yes, our immigration system is more broken today than ever before. This crisis is, in my view, much worse than any crisis that happened at the border under Biden. Because this is a direct assault on the individual rights of people living in this country. And it is truly despicable and horrific. Now, in addition to that, the Trump administration is making America inhospitable for people who come to visit. And indeed, several countries around Europe are telling their residents to beware and to be cautious, that they could be detained, and that the border control of the United States has a lot of leeway in terms of who they let in and who they don't, even if you have a visa, even if you're legally coming to the United States. And just beware, because they could be detained for a while. This is after a number of Europeans now have been detained and returned home, even though they were completely coming in legally. It's also the case that, as I think we talked about a few weeks ago, Trump signed an executive order basically orienting the Justice Department to make immigration issues a major priority for law enforcement. Like there's murder going on, rape, and all kinds of, gangsters and armed burglary and all kinds of stuff going on. But the most important thing right now, the Justice Department should be focused on right now is immigration. So a lot of small-time immigration, people violating immigration, small immigration legal issues, are now getting much harsher treatment than they used to. So one of the things that these European countries are warning their citizens is, if you go to the United States, beware, do not infringe on any little immigration issue. Don't overstay your visa. Don't do any of that stuff, because when you try to leave, they will come after you. Brown University this week advised its international students and staff members not to travel outside the United States because there's extreme escalation in immigration enforcement, even greater than what Trump promised originally. And immigration officers have a lot of discretion at the border who they allow to re-enter the United States and who not. We know of this French guy who was coming to Houston for a conference, completely legit, legal, fine. And the immigration officers detained him, stopped him, took his phone, searched his phone, found in his phone negative comments about Donald Trump. And as a consequence, he was sent back to France. So you can't say negative things about Donald Trump if you're coming into America. I'm so glad I'm a citizen. So glad I'm a citizen. And so far, they're not detaining citizens for saying bad things about Donald Trump. So far. You've got a couple, an American citizen with a German fiancée, took a road trip to Mexico, and when they came back, U.S. border agents handcuffed both her, U.S. citizen, and handcuffed to a bench while her fiancé was being accused of violating the rules of his 90-day U.S. tourist permit. They handcuffed, shackled her fiancé and sent him to a crowded U.S. immigration detention center where he spent 16 days locked up before being allowed to fly home to Germany. I mean, this is nuts, but on the other hand, this is what you get when you constantly demonize immigrants, make immigration the most important issue on the table, constantly portray them as dangerous and doing massive damage to the United States, and then you give government officials, immigration agents, ICE, you give them power. And you'd think many of us would know what that means to give, to when you give, government bureaucrats power, they're going to abuse it. It's going to be abused. It's going to be abused. And in this case, it's being abused. And it's going to go worse, not get better. Because again, there's no public outcry about this. Nobody really cares. They're just immigrants. Why would you care? Hey, he overstayed his visa. Why shouldn't he go to detention for 16 days? And, there are more and more of these. More and more of these. A German tourist who was stopped at Tijuana crossing, spent 6 weeks locked up, including a week in solitary confinement. Now, granted, we don't know the whole story. Maybe she objected vigorously to her being arrested. A backpacker from Wales on the Canadian border spent nearly 3 weeks at a detention center before being flown home. A Canadian woman on a work visa was detained at the Tijuana border, spent 12 days in detention before returning home. God, I'm so glad. I mean, the reality is, would I have even immigrated to the United States if this is what the United States is becoming? It's a good question. But I'm so glad, have passport, American citizen. Now, we will see. We will see. Because this stuff is scary. This stuff is scary. All right. Talk about scary stuff. God, today's a scary day. It's a weird day today. All right, so this is RFK today. I guess it's today on Fox and Friends, I think, or Fox News anyway. One of the Fox News. I mean, RFK is very concerned about the health, all your health, my health, everybody's health, very concerned about health, particularly children, very concerned about children. That's why, if they get measles, it's fine, so be it. Let them have measles. Give them vitamin A. Guy's a nut. Anyway, RFK has said on this Fox interview that he is going to work with states to get cell phones out of the schools. And I thought, it's not a bad idea. Kids are distracted by their cell phones. They should be focused on studying. And maybe schools should ban cell phones from the school. Oh, Paula Zeus, you didn't know vitamin A cures measles? Or at least it makes it easier for you to recover from measles, according to RFK. But that is not the reason. The reason is not that it's distracting. It's not that it reduces their attention span, and so on. That is not the reason RFK wants cell phones out of schools. He has a much more scientific reason. He has a much more, here's the reason. Quote, cell phones produce electromagnetic radiation, which has been shown to do neurological damage to kids when it's around them all day. It's also been shown to cause cellular damage and even cancer. Cell phone use and social media use on the cell phone has been directly connected with depression, poor performance in school, suicidal ideation, and substance abuse. Now, again, there's something to be said about not allowing kids to be on social media while they're in school. But that's not it. It's the electromagnetic radiation. And I'm sure you've all read about this. I mean, this is why I'm sure all of you keep your iPhones in a special anti-radiation enclosure so that you do not have the radiation inflicted on you. It's pretty amazing. The iPhone causes cancer. I've had one strapped to me since 2000, when they come out, 2008, 9. I have one strapped to me nonstop, all day, right next to my bed, all night. And I guess it's not just these things. It's also not just smartphones. It's cell phones, which I've had for a very long time. So far, no cancer, but you never know. You never know, right? How is it that nobody cares about this? How is it that literally 52 senators, I think it was 52 or 51 senators, voted for a anti-science, anti-evidence, anti-life, not very smart, conspiracy theory nutcase to run the Health and Human Services Department, not just any department. The department responsible for science and interpreting it. How did a nut job become the Health and Human Services Director? It really is. It's of all the things out there, of all the people nominated, of all the people appointed, this one is even more astounding to me than Trump getting elected. I mean, he had 52 senators who had the time and could research and could figure it out and kind of. Where is Senator Cassidy? Remember Senator Cassidy? He was like the swing vote, and he's a doctor, and he was very skeptical of RFK, and he didn't want to vote for him. And then in the end, RFK convinced him that no, he wasn't anti-vax. Well, now RFK has shown that he is anti-vax. He's spoken a lot, even though he had that op-ed that advocated for the measles vaccine. That was like somebody put a gun to his head and forced him to do it, because every other statement he makes is anti-measles vaccine. And he's a nutcase. Where is Senator Cassidy? Where are Senator Cassidy's constituents demanding that he rethink his vote, or at least criticize RFK for being the worst? I mean, everything Cassidy thought badly of him being exactly that. Where's the American people demanding that this guy be fired? I mean, Cassidy evaded, the whole Senate evaded. Every Republican there who voted for RFK is an evader. And again, I will say, what really gets to me is not that. It's that nobody really seems to care. I mean, the left goes after the Trump administration because they're the left. But nobody seems to actually care about. I mean, this is going to have real consequences on the lives of real people. And, who cares about cell phones? The cell phone in schools, kids won't take cell phones into school. Fine. But it's going to manifest itself in much worse things, like the development of mRNA vaccines for cancer. Who knows what other treatments are deemed unscientific by RFK and therefore will never come to the table, will never actually happen. Who knows how many lives will be lost because they won't get vaccinated? Yeah, I mean, stem cell research already in the United States is way behind the rest of the world because of both left and right hate it. I mean, yeah, I don't know. I mean, here's a good example of what the dangers really are. So, I guess at the periphery, you probably know that there's this bird flu going around, not in humans, but in birds. The recent bird flu outbreak wiped out over 150 million chickens, right? And as a consequence, egg prices have gone sky high, and the whole U.S. poultry industry is in trouble. And by the way, guess what they're doing in order to try to reduce egg prices in the United States? Because egg prices are very high, if you haven't noticed, and that's because of bird flu, not greedflation, not because some conspiracy, bird flu. chickens have died and been killed because they had the virus, so as not to infect other chickens. What they're doing is they're importing massive quantities of eggs from, of all places, South Korea. Couldn't do it from Canada. Canadian chickens, they're not good because they're Canadian. And we're like at war with Canada right now and can't import. Anyway, low tariffs with South Korea. No tariffs on chicken eggs yet. Now, maybe April 2nd we'll get chicken egg tariffs. Maybe they'll get an exemption because we really need the chicken eggs right now. And it turns out that when you import chicken eggs, the price of eggs goes down. Isn't that amazing? That actual free trade lowers prices. So massive quantities of chicken eggs are being imported. Anyway, that's an aside on trade. But RFK, the great scientific mind that he is, has suggested we just let the virus rip through the flock, unmitigated, in hope of finding naturally immune chickens. And, that way we can create a whole new generation of chickens that are immune to this virus. Now, what's the flaw in that one? I mean, I don't want to question the great scientific mind of RFK, but what's the flaw in that? Well, if you let the virus rip through the flock unmitigated, what is going to happen to the virus? It's going to mutate. And it's going to mutate over and over and over and over again because it's going to be unlimited in terms of, infections. The more you let a virus rip, the more it mutates. Now, as it mutates, and as you get these millions and millions of iterations, hundreds of millions of iterations, there's a much, much greater chance that it morphs into a version that jumps to humans. Now, I'm not even concerned, talking here about the industry and what it does to the industry and how long it takes for these immune chickens to arise, if any of them arise, given the virus is constantly mutating and all of that. But just think about humans. One of the great fears of infectious disease doctors out there is that this virus will mutate, this bird virus will mutate and affect humans, and it could be, and has been for other animals to which it's mutated, very deadly. And if you think this is all science fiction, then you should go study a little bit of science or talk to a scientist. It's not. It's very real, and it's very scary. RFK, let it rip. Let it rip. Let it rip into the human population. And then the guy running the entire program for health is RFK. And of course, one thing we know will not be developed if RFK is running Health and Human Services when a virus is ripping through the American human population is the one thing we will not get is a vaccine, because he doesn't believe in those. Now, there is another alternative, which some people are advocating for, and that is to vaccinate the chickens. And that means injecting every single chicken individually. And hundreds of millions of chickens. Very expensive. And it will probably eliminate all export of chickens. Yeah, I know Wyatt is very afraid of vaccines. God forbid you vaccinate anybody or anything because it's scary stuff. He's proud to have not been vaccinated for COVID. I mean, which is insane, but he's proud of it. And just vaccines, scary stuff. God forbid we do anything actually scientifically. Yep. Yeah, you're gonna eat organic chickens. That'd be good. Let's eat organic chickens. Vaccine-free chickens. Yes. Anyway, exports would shrink because the rest of the world is not going to buy vaccinated chickens. People don't like vaccinated chickens to eat. So what do? Well, I think what you do is what we've done so far, which is mass culling. The killing of massive numbers of chickens in order to prevent the virus from spreading. This is what's happened. It's creating some economic distress to certainly the poultry farmers, but and to egg prices. Although again, free trade is the solution to that. But yeah, nature generally is not friendly to human beings. It's part of this whole organic thing. I don't trust nature. Nature's not thinking of my interests. I trust human beings much more than I trust nature. Nature wants to kill me, generally. I think that generally is true. Nature wants to kill human beings. And we have to use our mind, science, to continue to live and to thrive. That's why vaccines are cool. Yeah, you should definitely have a choice about it. But to be proud of your anti-vax stance. Okay, so I did do bird flu. All right, so I did that. So let's go backwards in the list of topics. So you remember the story from a week or so ago, maybe 2 weeks ago, that Trump signed an executive order basically going after the law firms that went after him. Basically going after the law firms that represented the government in going after Trump himself. And he kicked them out of federal law courts, and he took away their security clearance and eliminated all government contracts for them, and basically was trying to wipe these firms out. And it was they sued, and this was in the courts. I mean, really ugly stuff, right? President of the United States using the presidency, using the power of executive orders to settle private disputes, which Trump is going to do a lot of this. He keeps promising more, and he will do more. Anyway, yesterday, the basically the CEO of one of those firms, the firm is Paul Weiss Rifkin Wouldn and Garrison LLP, a multinational law firm headquartered in New York, with lots of very high-profile clients. Anyway, yesterday, the CEO of that, or the chairman of the law firm, but in the name of Brad Karp, met with Trump and basically kissed the ring. The law firm has promised to provide the equivalent of $40 million in pro bono legal services over the course of President Trump's term to support the administration's initiatives. So they came, and basically, I mean, this is how it goes in authoritarian states. How much do I have to write a check for this lawsuit to go away? What do you need for me to do for this lawsuit to go away? And Trump said $40 million to the causes of my determination to support the administration's initiatives. Basically, you will now become my puppy dog to go after all my enemies, because that's administration's initiatives, is whatever Trump wants. And the law firm said, sure. The firm also committed to a merit-based hiring, no more DEI. The government is now dictating no more DEI in hiring or promotion, and that they will adopt, use, and they will never, or at least not in the foreseeable future, adopt, use, or pursue any DEI policies. This is going beyond. I think Wyatt was very pro-choice in vaccines. I wonder if Wyatt is pro-choice in using DEI in the private sector, if companies can use DEI if they want to. Not if you want to be free of lawsuits from Donald Trump, from the government. Mr. Kopp said afterwards, "We are gratified that the president has agreed to withdraw the executive order concerning Paul Weiss. We look forward to an engaged and constructive relationship with the president and the administration." I mean, how swampy is this? How swampy is this? Yeah, I figured Wyatt would not criticize Trump, so I figured he would support Trump on this, or at least say better than Biden, which is what they always say when confronted with something really stupid. They can't actually say, no, Trump's wrong on this, this is bad. That's impossible. That would require independent thinking. So anyway, yes, we now have a president of the United States that is getting free legal work, I mean, as president, from a major law firm in exchange for not having an executive order that penalizes them for something they should have never been penalized for. By the way, people at the law firm are pretty upset. At least one person has already resigned or stepped away from the firm as a consequence of this. I mean, it truly is insane. And so it used to be that politicians were corrupt, but it's kind of hidden. And the amazing thing about Trump is no hiding anymore. I mean, literally, Trump put this out on his Twitter feed for all to see exactly the deal that he cut in order to rescind an executive order that arguably was unconstitutional, discriminatory to begin with. This is small-time dictatorship stuff. This is authoritarian. And nobody cares. Nobody cares. You know, again, you let these little things go. Somebody's been deported, shouldn't have been deported. It happens. What can you do? Trump squeezes money out of a law firm. He's done away with the Department of Education. You know, you let these little things by. You let them by one after the other. You focus just on a few good things that are being done. And soon you wake up and the good things are insignificant as compared to how much of the country, the very fabric of the American government, is destroyed, is gone. And by that time, it's just too late. It's just too late. All right. I thought we had this other topic that I guess we're skipping. Okay. I forgot to write it. All right. So it appears that Europe is getting serious. It's getting serious about basically the U.S. leaving NATO. I think U.S. is now pretty serious about leaving NATO. It's just a question of timing and exactly how it works. And when it happens, well, timing. But it certainly looks like France and Germany and the UK and even the Nordic countries are starting to think about and engage in conversations, and actually, it turns out, engage with the United States in discussions about a transition where the United States leaves NATO and Europe takes control, where the French and the British provide a nuclear umbrella, and where ultimately, European defense industry grows significantly, and Europeans field the troops, the weapon systems on their borders to defend them against their enemies, in this case, clearly Russia. I actually think this is a good development. I wish it was happening under different terms, not under the terms of a Trump administration pivot towards in favor of Russia, not a Trump administration basically pivot against Europe. But yeah, I think U.S. should leave NATO in a slow, systematic, planned way that allows the Europeans to beef up their security as the U.S. retreats from Europe. It would save a lot of money on defense spending. It would cut the budgets. Russia is a threat primarily to Europe. I mean, also a threat to the United States, but primarily to Europe. And Europe certainly has the military, the wealth, and the people to be able to deal with that threat without U.S. constant protection and subsidy. So I think this is overall a good move. The fact that they are thinking about it and what they'd like is a managed transfer of the responsibility for NATO to happen over the next 5 to 10 years. And let's hope that the Trump administration can be adult about this. It's hard to believe because they're not adult about anything else. But let's hope they can be adult about this and that they will actually sit down with the Europeans and plan out a transition and let the Europeans take control over NATO and over the defense of Europe. We'll see. I'm not sure if Trump's friend Putin will allow him to do that. Friend or handler? I don't know. I'm not sure what to call him exactly. If we're talking about Russia, then we should note that in spite of the fact that Trump has told us that Putin committed to a ceasefire when it comes to energy sites, Trump also reiterated today that a full ceasefire is just days away. It's imminent. It's going to happen. And at the same time, last night, Russia launched a massive drone attack on Ukraine's energy sites. I guess Putin didn't get the memo that Trump had said that Putin committed to a ceasefire vis-a-vis energy and infrastructure. There was also a barrage on Odessa, on residential areas in Odessa, and a pipeline. A pipeline, a gas pipeline was also struck. And again, this is in spite of the fact that Putin committed supposedly to this stopping attacks on Ukraine's energy infrastructure and so on. And then when Trump was confronted by this today in front of the press, he does a press conference basically every day. So what about this? And Trump said, well, they're attacking each other, moral equivalency over and over and over again. And, what can you do? They're attacking each other all the time. And there's going to be a ceasefire. Trust me, don't worry. Any day now, there'll be a complete ceasefire. Complete, total. And again, and this is, nobody cares. Nobody cares. Indeed, I see people all over the place justifying Trump. This is 4D chess. This is the way you negotiate with Putin. You give him everything he wants before you even sit down. I mean, there's no real, I'm repeating myself, but there's no thinking. It's very frustrating. Somebody said, Yaron stands here while the world burns. Yeah, it's not funny. It's true. Putin is making a fool of Trump, and it doesn't have any impact on people who support Trump. Nothing. Nothing can waver their support. Nothing will shift them. Nothing will change their mind even a little bit about any of this. Because of the Trump zombie syndrome, which they've all been infected with. Trump zombie syndrome. Finally, it's worth noting, and I think just an interesting fact. Yeah, I mean, he's this incompetent and this insane and this pathetic. Why it says we're only 2 months in. Notice he can't criticize Trump. He just can't say anything, even moderately, mildly, infinitesimally critical of Trump. So now we're only 2 months in. Yeah, and he's this destructive, this crazy, this unhinged. In 2 months, imagine what he's going to do to this country in 4 years. Imagine what he's going to do to the world in 4 years if he keeps up this pace. Yeah, I can imagine that, but you should try. It's only been 2 months. Like, oh God, help me. It's really interesting. It's completely aside Trump and. But regarding Ukraine, Ukraine is becoming really a place where I think theorists of war and strategy are going to really try to understand what modern warfare looks like. Never in the history of mankind have drones been used the way they're being used in Ukraine. Indeed, never has AI, maybe with the exception of Israel. Israel probably uses more AI than Ukraine and Russia, but never has AI been used. But just the sheer quantity of drones and the ability of drones to basically neutralize so many of the traditional weapon systems. And I'm sure that we're seeing every military in the world, I know I shouldn't do this. I get distracted, right? So Wyatt feels like, yeah, I said he wouldn't criticize Trump, so he needs to criticize Trump. So he gives us this. This is his criticism of Trump. I don't like him making a show out of releasing docs on JFK and Epstein, but his overall strategy was always going to be bumpy. That's his criticism. That's what you get out of him. He's too showy about these two insignificant things. I mean, never mind his treatment of Ukraine and Zelensky, his groveling to Putin, his complete backstabbing of our European allies. Never mind his appointment of RFK to head up the Health and Human Services Department. Never mind all the, just nonsense and craziness and insanity that is going on across the U.S. government. This is what troubles Wyatt. You should change your name. You really should. Anyway, I think that it's pretty amazing what they are doing now with drone formations, different types of drones that do different things. Drones right now are responsible for over 60% of the daily Russian casualties. That is, 60% of the Russian casualties, both in equipment and personnel, are being inflicted by drones, not by conventional tanks, artillery, mines, things like that. And drones are the principal way in which the Ukrainian military has actually stopped the Russian army from advancing. Yeah, David says the corruption. Yeah, corruption doesn't bug him. He's made a little bit too much about releasing these two documents. The role of drones is only expanding. It's only growing. I'm sure that every military in the world is looking at this and studying it and trying to figure out its implications for their potential battlefield. The Ukrainians are now at the cutting edge of drone development. They're developing the best drones, partially because they're tested in real battle. They're developing the drone strategies that have never been tried before, never been utilized before. If you want to understand the modern warfare, what you need to do is be in Ukraine. You got to be in Ukraine to kind of study and figure out what they do. Is there a war for tanks anymore? Can a tank defend against a drone? What would it take for tanks to defend against drones? What do you do with a drone swarm? One drone, okay. But what do you do with a swarm of them coming at you? How do you defend against that? What kind of weapons would you use as an air defense system to knock drones out of the sky? Israel, for example, will be deploying later this year, maybe early next year, but probably later this year, a laser technology, which very cheaply can knock out very small objects out of the sky very, very quickly. And again, very cheaply. But is that the solution? Can you make systems that are mobile enough? If they're mobile, where do they get their electricity from? Lasers are massive consumers of electricity. But it is, those who are interested in defense and war, in how to fight a war under the current conditions, are going to need to carefully study Ukraine. Ukraine, whatever you think of it, Ukraine is doing an amazing job in holding back the Russians in spite of the odds against them and in spite of the Americans handcuffing them and the Europeans handcuffing them in terms of the use of advanced weapons. And they have had to improvise. And the improvisations are brilliant and will be studied for decades in terms of how to deal with, with an invading army. By the way, just breaking news, right now, the Trump administration is weighing whether to offer economic aid to farmers that experience hardships as a result of President Trump's upcoming tariffs. So this is what you do. You raise tariffs, but that's only good. That just increases the revenue, so you can cut the income tax, right? You raise tariffs, and then you subsidize your farmers. You subsidize domestic industry. Pretty amazing. And of course, that is not the criticism of Trump. Tariffs. Can't criticize Trump with tariffs because, again, he's playing 4D chess, which Iran doesn't understand. So we can't criticize. We can only criticize the fact that he's a little too enthusiastic about the release of the documents from Epstein and JFK. That's it. Yes, we'll keep subsidizing everybody so that we can play around with tariffs. We can play around with destroying the economy. But again, very few people seem to care. All right, let's quickly go to Hungary. Orban, my favorite European president. Viktor Orban is launching a number of initiatives that are being hailed by the American right as transformative. He's now declared that women who have 2 or more children will never in their entire lives have to pay any income tax. Pretty amazing. Prime Minister, he's not a president, that's right, he's Prime Minister. If you only have 1 child, you get no income tax for a certain number of years. So let's incentivize mothers to have children by allowing them not to pay income tax. So I guess single women are the ones that are going to be paying income tax to fund the children of, to fund government services, that the children of the women who are not paying income tax, and I don't know how that works. Does that mean the husbands don't pay income tax either? I think it's just women. So, but women who have 2 children probably are not working, so are they paying any income tax anyway? I mean, it's a little ambiguous how this exactly works. But more importantly, Hungary's Orban has figured out how to deal with inflation. Inflation is out of control because Hungary is not part of the euro. Hungary is part of the European Union, but has not adopted the euro as its currency. It wanted to stay independent. It wanted to stay a strong, independent Hungary in control of its own economic fate. And as part of that, they want to be in control of their own currency. And as a consequence of that, the Hungarian central bank has done what central banks have always done, printed money. And as a consequence of that, Hungary has massive inflation, way higher than any other European country. So what do you think Orban's solution to high food prices is as inflation is rebounding right now and going up? Like, is he taking a page out of Millet's book to cut inflation? Well, no. That would mean more freedom, and Orban is against more freedom. Instead, Orban is doing what Elizabeth Warren would do. I've always told you the left and the right are the same when it comes to economics. This is a slam dunk. This is right-wing economics. Orban is launching price controls over food in order to control inflation. This is what the American right's favorite prime minister in the world is doing. Millet is not a guy the American right actually likes. They don't. Maybe that's why he has to continuously suck up to Trump, because he's afraid he'll lose them any day now, because he actually is a free market guy. He actually believes in limited and small government. And that's the opposite of what American right today believes. Indeed, Orban is Elizabeth Warren, Stephanie Kelton, the MMT people. So, price controls. That is what we're doing. And really, he's blaming greedflation. And in this case, a lot of the food coming into Hungary is imported food. And he is deciding that a profit margin of 10% is enough. You shouldn't have more than 10% profit. And on all foreigners, all foreign goods coming into, they're going to get a 10% profit margin. And that's good enough. We don't need the market to determine this. We don't allow greed to determine this. We, central planners in charge, are going to determine what it is. This is right out of the greedflation playbook. This is, God, this is who they love. This is who they love. This is who they want to admire. This is who they admire. This is who they want to emulate. 10% net isn't too bad, David said. It isn't if that's really your net, but how's the government going to determine that? How are they going to calculate that 10% net? And it's none of their business, good or bad, none of their business. Let's see. Dave Dean, $50 sticker. Thank you. Really appreciate the sticker and the support. And we are going to move now to answering your questions on the Super Chat. You can still continue to ask them. Thank you, Silvanos. Thank you, Jonathan Honing, for the stickers as well. We are $54 short of our 2-hour goal. And we're way ahead because we're only beginning the second hour now. So feel free to jump in with the $54 so we can get to our goal. That'd be great. Maybe somebody can just do that as a sticker and we're done. But in the meantime, let's answer some questions. We've got some questions, a lot of them today. This is good. This is great. Let's start with David. If we eliminate public education, how do we prevent only rich kids from getting quality education? What would that mean for our meritocracy? Well, why would you think that only rich kid would get a quality education? I mean, do markets not supply goods to poor people? I mean, do poor people not buy cars? They clearly do. Now, the cars that poor people buy are not as fancy schmancy as Mercedes and BMW and Rolls Royce, but they're pretty good. You buy a Toyota Corolla. I mean, you'll get a lot of mileage out of that, and it's good. It'll get you from point A to point B. It does what is necessary. Poor people can afford food. Maybe they don't get organic, schmorganic, latest, greatest Whole Foods food. But they get good food, and the fruits and vegetables in every supermarket, they're reasonably priced. Just don't buy the eggs, but everything else is reasonably priced. They can have a phone. You know, maybe it's not the latest, greatest iPhone. Maybe it's used. Maybe it's old. Maybe it's not a smartphone even. There's almost nothing. There's almost nothing that poor people cannot or do not have access to. They have access to all these things. There's no product out there that we say poor people don't have access to decent quality. So it's true. Schools that cater to poor people will probably be less fancy than schools that cater to rich people. I'll give you some examples. Schools that cater to poor people might not have indoor swimming pools. They might not have a football team. They might not have, if they do have a football team, they might have to use the city park to train and to practice and to play. And they won't have their own stadium with seats and a football field. You know, their lab, when they study science, might be a little bit more dilapidated than the shiny, brand new, super duper lab that the rich kids get. I mean, that's the case even now with public education. The public schools in the nice districts have far better facilities than the public schools in the poor districts. Just go to the south side of Chicago to see what a public school looks like for poor kids. But if you provide competition, if you create competition, and if you engage parents in school, in choosing the school, and if you give parents a stake, they're paying for it. Everybody who pays for something wants something in return. Then I think it's pretty easy to imagine that schools, while not as shiny and bright and beautiful as the rich schools, will improve in quality. Competition will drive them to find the right balance that poor people are willing to pay for. And my guess is that balance will primarily consist of a great classroom education. Now, and by the way, you know, we're moving into a world where we're going to have to question the very existence of teachers. One of the most powerful educational tools that really give students a huge leg up is tutoring. One-on-one tutoring. Going at the child's pace and providing guidance and answers and challenges for the particular child. Now, the problem with tutoring is it's very hard to scale. You need a teacher for every child. But we now have a tool to basically scale tutoring so that every child can indeed have a teacher, certainly in subjects like math. What is that tool? Anybody know what the tutor of the future, who that is? AI. artificial intelligence. There is already a number of tutoring programs run by an AI tutor who adjusts the level of tutoring to the child, responds to the child's queries, responds to the child's confusions. Absolutely, AI is a phenomenal math tutor. They're already seeing amazing results. There are a number of companies out there with products that are being used. I don't see why it cannot, if you give it the right prompts and guide it, why it cannot teach mathematics. And there are probably several other topics that it can teach and be easily adaptable to the child's level of ability. Now, it's not teaching in the traditional sense of it knows something because it doesn't know anything. But, but I don't know. I mean, the reality is let the market determine. So it could be that kids go to school, but a lot of what they do in school is engage with AI and teachers supervising and monitoring. Maybe it's something else. Let competition define it, determine it. Okay, I'll just end with this. I highly recommend a book called A Beautiful Tree by, name of the author escapes me right now, Beautiful Tree. Somebody knows who the author is, let me know. He's a British author. I can see his face, can't remember his name. And there it is. A Beautiful Tree. The author is James Tooley. James Tooley. Thank you, Mary Eileen. And I found it on Amazon. It's called The Beautiful Tree. And it documents the existence of private schools in the poorest slums in Nigeria and in India, in Calcutta, Nigeria, and other places. And it shows that poor parents inside the slums are happy to pay tuition for small, independent, private schools in which students are getting an education far superior to the government schools at the periphery of the slum that are free. They'd rather pay than send it to the free schools. So there's a natural experiment out there in poor cultures. Poor cultures have more private schools than rich cultures. Check out A Beautiful Tree. It's an amazing, inspiring book. Not a fiction. It's a nonfiction book. Troy, thank you, Troy. It says, I flicked you an email for a potential show on U.S. Supreme Court, just in case you missed it. Yeah, I did see it. I will get back to you, and we will do it. I've just been super busy and preparing for my trip, but I don't know when I would do it given the trip. But yes, definitely. Thank you. Really appreciate it. And thank you for the 500 Australian dollars. That is amazing. You've taken us above the goal where we need to be. Really, really appreciate it. This month is turning out to be fantastic. So thank you to all of you guys for the super chat. All right, Andrew, many conservatives respond they're illegal to every objection to immigration policies. Many know how hard it is to become legal here, that our economy attracts them, and most are good. Do you view their illegal defense as evasive? Oh, absolutely. I always say, I'm an illegal driver. They're an illegal immigrant. I'm an illegal driver. I speed. And therefore, I'm sure you should put me in jail, maybe deport me, because I'm an illegal driver. And during during Prohibition, many Americans were illegal drinkers. They were illegal drinkers. Just horrible. I mean, subhuman almost to be an illegal drinker. So what? So you did something illegal. Whose rights did you violate? Whose property did you destroy? Who did you punch in the nose? No right has been violated. There are lots of stupid laws in America. There are lots of laws that, people violate. Some of you might be illegal taxpayers. Maybe you've skimmed a little bit on your taxes. Maybe. Some of you out there, maybe. What should we do with you? You illegal taxpayers. I mean, what does it add? It's just a way of demonizing people. Don't speed in Brazil. I don't rent cars in Brazil. I know better than to drive in Brazil. It's evasive. It's they think they have the moral high ground when they say it. Oh, but they're illegal, right? I'm illegal too. I sped on my way here. What are you going to do to me? What should be done to the illegal driver, Yaron Brook? It's pathetic. But again, it's a real illustration of the inability to think. So, okay, so they committed a misdemeanor. They crossed the border. They didn't violate anybody's rights. They didn't rape, pillage. They didn't kill anybody. They didn't defraud anybody. What should be the penalty for somebody who commits such a victimless crime? Because there is no victim. Is it to villainize them and make them out to be these monsters, which is what you're doing? Not you, Andrew, but what they are doing. Ridiculous. Thank you, Andrew. Silvanos, thanks for being a beacon of sanity, Yaron. God, I don't always feel sane. It's hard. I mean, the quantity of insanity being bombarded to us these days is just off the charts. I hope NATO can survive without Trump injecting a poison pill. Seems like we're seeing the borders slowly drawn for World War III between the world superpowers. I hope I'm wrong. I hope you're wrong too. And yes, I mean, this is the kind of mayhem, the kind of antagonism, the kind of appeasement and weakness from the good guys that does lead to war, and often World War. I mean, the craziness of what's going on right now, it definitely reminds me of Weimar Germany, and both the left and the right. Now, Europe is stepping forward. I'm inspired by their willingness to do that, but if they step forward and do it in a Keynesian way, and they issue a huge amount of debt without liberalizing, deregulating their economies, will they be able to support their ambitions? Ambitions are good, to field an independent army, but will they be able to do it financially? And then, of course, what happens to the United States over the next few years? I mean, a lot of countries are smarting up about buying F-35s. I don't know if you heard, but Canada is reviewing whether to buy the F-35. So a number of European countries, Portugal and others. And the reason is that, well, the F-35s don't have a literal kill switch. If you don't get parts to it, which the Americans have to provide, it's very hard to maintain. And certainly in combat, you need parts. So the Europeans are now talking about developing their own 5th generation or 6th generation plane. Trump just today authorized Boeing, of all companies, Boeing, the incompetent Boeing, to build America's 6th generation plane, fighter plane, right? So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. Yeah, it's called the F-47 is the new plane they are designing. But of course, why anybody is really spending a lot of time and a lot of thought designing manned planes, I don't understand. The future is clearly unmanned aircraft. The future is clearly drones of various sizes and various abilities and various constitutions. The future is not A-to-A combat, but why let's assign Boeing to build the next super air-to-air fighter. But yes, I hope too that NATO survives and that the Europeans can manage to do the right thing. And sadly, they often can't. They often don't. Okay, let me take this question because it's related. Catherine, you said the U.S. should leave NATO in a very controlled way. Wouldn't this be as bad for the U.S. weapons companies? Aren't the European governments important customers who also share the cost of research and development? I mean, to some extent, it would be bad, but leaving NATO should not limit the ability of Europeans to buy American weapons, particularly if Americans find a way to guarantee that they don't have kill switches, and maybe even move some of the production of spare parts to Europe so that Europeans can feel secure that they will get the spare parts. There are lots of ways in which you can do this, but you don't maintain an alliance and you don't lead an alliance in order to protect your weapons manufacturers. American U.S. companies might take a hit, so be it. And they'll have to figure out a different business model if they can't sell outside of the United States. I really do think we're approaching a time where all of the thinking around weapons, this is my point about the Ukrainian drones, all the thinking about weapons, weapon systems, what weapons are needed, in a confrontation, for example, with China, what do we need? All of that is going to be changed. All of that is going to be different. Do we need another aircraft carrier, or do we need submarine drones? Submarines that could function underwater for months without rising to the surface and with no human beings on board. All kinds of other drone boats. Do we really need a shipbuilding industry, which Trump is committed to rebuilding, when really what we need is the capacity to build small, maneuverable, remote control boats? But you really need strategic thinking for this. I'm not sure you need the current weapons companies. You need maybe a diversified set. And it's not clear why, with a rational America, Europe would fear that they wouldn't be able to actually manage their weapon systems if they bought them from the U.S. Okay, James has a two-part question. Part one, in the wake of President Donald Trump issuing executive orders about diversity, equity, and inclusion programming in the military, news reports started blaring that videos about the Tuskegee Airmen and other historical figures have been banished from Air Force basic military training. Is it DEA to discuss historical figures that are non-white? Well, of course not. And particularly when they were non-white in an era of racism, then the fact that they were non-white is another expression of their bravery, their courage to face not just an enemy, the Germans, but also the enemy, the racists within the American Air Force and within the American military. I think they took down a Navajo signalman who'd won some kind of medal and was part of the raising of the flag in Iwo Jima. Because he's Navajo, it must be DEI. I mean, all of that is insanity. But this is the kind of insanity that has infected these people. And this is the most important thing you have to do right now. This is where the energy needs to be focused. James, in summary of part one and part two, will this create more segregation in the military, or will it bring people together? How does the military help end racism? I think the military did help racism in World War II. Even going back to World War I, there were blacks in the U.S. military, and whites and blacks fought together. And as a consequence of that, I think whites gained an appreciation. And the consequence of that was people were less resistant to desegregation. desegregation. I think that this has the potential to create, we'll see what they actually do, right? But right now, it does not look good. It seems like this singling out minorities for negative treatment rather than just eliminating DEI, which they should. DEI is wrong. DEI should be eliminated. David, I read an article about a French tourist being denied entry into the United States because her phone had anti-Trump messages on it. Your thoughts? Yeah, I mean, it's a real story. I think it was a man, not a woman, and it was somebody attending on the way to a conference, and I think it was in Houston, and they were sent back because they had anti-Trump messages in their private texts. What do I think of that? I think it is horrific. I think it is despicable and disgusting, and I think it should scare anybody who is a decent American. And I think, not surprising, ICE is a fascist entity. The Border Control agents are, some of the worst, and you're giving them incredible power now. The little government agents who have a lot of power now, and, they're going to use that power. They are going to use that power. All right, one second. I have to do some administrative stuff. Okay, blocked him from the channel. Thank you, David. Andrew, I don't know the legality, immigration status of some of student protesters being held, but on a personal level, who the hell do they think they are coming to this country, trespassing private property and fomenting hate? Absolutely, but one of the problems is that this country does not prosecute them for doing that. Why isn't this country putting them up for criminal charges for trespassing, for destroying private property? That's where it should start. And the fact that New York City and Columbia University itself are not willing to prosecute these students, that is where the essence of the issue is. Right? But yeah, it's horrific that they come to this country to do that. And they should be prosecuted. There's a law here. It's exactly like the rape gangs in England, the grooming gangs in England that rape young women and girls. Where was the police? Why weren't they prosecuted? Why didn't the police arrest them? Why didn't they do their job? Same thing in Colombia. Why isn't Colombia doing a job in prosecuting vandals? Molten Splendor. Love that name. Thank you for the $50 sticker. Really, really, really appreciate that. That is amazing. Shahzbot. The shipment of people to a foreign prison is highly reminiscent of the Andor TV show. Yeah, that's right. They take him to this other planet where he is in prison, and then they do a prison breakout. It's a great prison breakout. Yes, and that's an authoritarian regime that does that. It's scary stuff. When you start using foreign prisons, and foreign prisons known for their brutality, and Donald Trump mentioned in his, press conference that he knows that it's brutal over there. Any respect for the rule of law, any respect for humanity, for rights of individuals, for basic human decency is out the window. It's gone. David, can you visualize a backlash against Trump if his legal policies lead to higher crime rates as he directs police to focus solely on immigration? Yeah, but what will be the rationalization then? And it's not clear that it'll be interesting to see what happens. Interesting to see what happens if and who he blames for the higher crime rates. He'll find a scapegoat, and again, the Trump zombies will eagerly embrace the scapegoat. So it'll be blue cities, it'll be mayors, it'll be local police forces that are blamed, not the Justice Department and the FBI. And the reality is, the Justice Department and the FBI is not primarily responsible for day-to-day crimes, if you will, local day-to-day crimes. But yeah, I hope crime doesn't increase because of this, but it very well could. And we'll see what happens. David says, tourism is very important to the U.S. economy. Does Trump not care about scaring away tourists because it affects blue states more than red states? Yeah, I mean, it does affect blue states more than red states. I don't think he cares, although Florida has a lot of tourists, Disneyland and such. I just don't think he cares. I don't think he cares about anything. I mean, tariffs clearly are bad economically. The stock market is even telling him that. And he doesn't care. Doesn't care. It's not about consequences. It's about appeasing Trump's whims, desires, promises he made, no matter what the consequences are. He wants to fulfill his promises. I mean, the tariffs are uniformly acknowledged to be the dumbest form of economic policy possible. Again, and I've said this for years and years and years and years, 9 years. No economist with anything believes tariffs, reciprocal or not, are good, do serve any kind of positive purpose. None. And I believe that if you actually brought it to a vote in the House of Representatives or the Senate, without the fear of Trump, they would all vote against the tariffs, overwhelmingly. I mean, Democrats might vote for the tariffs, particularly the left wing. I mean, Bernie Sanders is pro-tariffs, but most Republicans are against it. Business leaders, I mean, nobody who understands anything about business and economics, nobody who understands even a little bit about business and economics believes the tariffs, reciprocal or not, on anything, are a good thing. Even using them as arm twisting, not a good thing. And evidence of this I gave you before. The fact that we're going to have to now increase subsidies to farmers in order to compensate them for the damage. They're not a good thing for arm twisting. They're a disaster. So literally, I mean what I say literally. There is no value to be gained from any tariffs for any reason. Hopper Campbell. People are in the mood to follow a fighter. Trump rode a wave he never deserved. True. A passionate objectivist like yourself, I think, would do very well politically. I think you're very wrong. I think as soon as they heard that I want to voucherize Medicare and do away with Social Security, phase it out, and expect them to take personal responsibility and do away with tariffs and slowly wind down the welfare state, and I would get a fraction of the votes. I wouldn't even do as well. I mean, I wouldn't even do as well as the Libertarian Party does, because I'd offend more people. And then they'd hear I'm an atheist, forget about it. So no, I completely disagree. I think I would do horrifically politically. I think you guys are way too optimistic about the culture, positive about the culture. Andrew, do you think some objectivists suffer from materialistic premise in the sense that causes one to care only about economic issues like regulations and industry and dismiss issues like immigration, free speech, and free press? No, I don't know anybody who's an advocate for objectivism who doesn't talk about immigration, free speech, and free press, and who doesn't care about those things, and who is, you would say, materialistic. So No, I don't think any objectivist intellectual, at least, holds those views. I mean, objectivists, there's objectivists who hold every view in the world. Optimus Prime, one of the most clarifying sentences for me on the whole Russia-Ukraine war was when you said the moral is the practical. Rand had some great one-liners. Yes, she did. Yes, she did, particularly if you understand them. David, what do you think of zero-based budgeting as opposed to just cutting spending? Well, I'm not sure what you mean by zero-based budgeting. We should, so you start with zero and you budget for every program as is required. I mean, I don't know. There's just, what you need to do is cut spending. I mean, there's just nothing else that needs to be done. And it needs to be on a massive scale. And look, Doge is doing some of that on a very small scale. And they are bringing to the forefront some of the most egregious abuses of government spending, of government money. But, yeah, I mean, everything should be built up from zero. But most of what the government does should be zero. Most of what the government does today should be zeroed out. You shouldn't build up from anything. So zero-based budgeting is fine as long as you're cutting government spending. And shrinking, more importantly than cutting government spending, shrinking the scope of activities of the government. The most important thing to do is to zero out significant parts of what the government is doing. So I'm all in favor of all the departments and agencies that Trump is shutting down. That's good. That's what should happen. You have a zero-based budgeting that starts and ends with zero. Michael, is Elon Musk Trump's puppet or the other way around? I think at the end, it's Trump's show, but they obviously feed off of each other and support each other. So Trump will go and hawk cars for Elon Musk's Tesla. Elon Musk will pander to Trump. I think it's very much a symbiote. They feed off of each other. It's not one directional. I think they, in their weird psychological way, it's win-win. At some point, I think it'll break down. But so far, it seems to be kind of win-win. Not your average algorithm. Do you ever see Las Vegas becoming a sophisticated city like Austin or Miami? Or is it too uneducated and desert to ever reach that state? I don't know what a sophisticated city is. But no, Vegas is a city centered around entertainment. That is its focus. That is its orientation. That's what it was built around. That's its heritage. I just don't, and there's no reason for it to move away from it because it's such big business. It's such big business. So I don't think Vegas will ever be like Austin or Miami because it doesn't need to be. It needs to invest heavily in the entertainment business that built the city. And it's done phenomenally well at exactly that. And I think it will continue to. James, having met people from every Ivy League school and other top-tier schools from around the country, do any of the schools appear going in the right direction? I mean, maybe now, but I haven't met people recently because I think there's a lot of cleaning house going on. But no, I don't think so. I mean, universities like Clemson, because of Brad Thompson's program, maybe the University of Texas because of other programs. So there's specific universities because of specific programs that might be heading in the right direction. But I wouldn't say there's any Ivy League school that is taking this on and is really heading in a positive direction. I just don't see that. Maybe it's out there, but I haven't seen it. Fender Hopper, is cognitive behavior therapy similar to Medicine 3.0 mentioned in online in Outlive, just applied in psychology? It seems to take the same approach, being informed by studies but personalized to the patient. Well, I think all psychology is that. I mean, even bad psychology claims to be informed by studies and personalized to the patient. So I don't know what psychology 2.0 would be or 1.0 would be. Maybe if somebody knew the history of psychology, they could see something like that. But I don't think so. I think it's cognitive behavioral therapy is definitely personalized and definitely based on science. But I don't think the analogy necessarily is helpful or true, because I don't think the two things have developed in parallel. Molten Splendor. I live in a neighborhood that guarantees single-family housing and prohibits high-density development in my backyard. Why is my choice bad because it hinders cheaper housing for others? Your choice is bad because you're violating the property rights of the property owners. Your choice is not bad because it hinders anybody. Your choice is bad because you're violating rights. That is, it's none of your business, right? None of your business as in a political entity to tell developers what they can and cannot do with the land. Now, if the land, if it's an HOA and it's a private neighborhood, and everybody in the neighborhood and the land owners are part of this HOA, the new land, right, is owned by also owners of the HOA, and everybody signed up to a single-family housing and prohibited high density, that's fine. Then it's contractual, it's voluntary, and that's what, agreements between people can do. But if it's the city zoning you as a single-family housing and excluding the ability of other homeowners to build high density on their property, then it is bad. Then it is bad. So it depends on if it's a HOA or if it's a government entity, a zoning entity. But the standard is not hindering cheaper housing. The standard is, are you violating the property rights of other people or not? That Doodle Bunny, interesting you think FDR, OBJ, and Woodrow Wilson had more character than Donald Trump. Trump didn't create giant socialist programs. Those are more likely to bring down a free society than a real estate developer with mean tweets. Well, I mean, FDR did not bring down the U.S. society. LBJ did not bring down America. And Woodrow Wilson did not bring down America. As awful the presidents as they were, and as big as their socialist programs were, they didn't bring down the culture. Indeed, you could argue that America thrived. Certainly post-FDR and post-Woodrow Wilson. America thrived ultimately post-LBJ. What's the issue, right? So while big socialist policies are really, really bad, much worse than that, much, much worse than big socialist policies, is a disregard for the law, right? Trump is not just a tweeter. Trump just isn't just a real estate developer with mean tweets. That is, I mean, Doodle Bunny, you listen to this show. I've provided over the last 9 years hundreds, if not thousands, of examples of how Donald Trump undermines the rule of law, American security, the American economy, just basic human decency, not because of his tweets, but because of his policies. And it really, it's disappointing that there's still people on here that I haven't gotten to. I haven't been able to penetrate. that you know, the facts and evidence and just all this. It's still all about mean tweets. That's the problem with Donald Trump. It's the mean tweets that got a law firm in America to bribe the president with $40 million in order to dismiss an executive order. That's a mean tweet. That's all it is. It's a mean tweet that the fact that the American government backstabbed an ally, backstabbed Ukraine, and is befriending a vicious dictator who is an enemy of the United States. That's just a mean tweet. I mean, I'm pissed off. I just don't get it. I don't understand you. I don't understand. I don't understand you guys. I really don't understand you guys. I don't get it. How you can characterize Donald Trump that way? He's just a real estate developer with mean tweets. He just sent innocent Venezuelans who were seeking political asylum in the United States because of Maduro's evil socialist regime. He just sent a bunch of innocent Venezuelans to jail in El Salvador. And it's just an issue of mean tweets? I mean, how many examples? He's got, the same disastrous trade policy as Herbert Hoover had in Smoot-Hawley that drove the U.S. into a Great Depression. He has tariffs as well that are going to do, if he actually follows through on everything he's promised, massive harm to the U.S. economy. And it's just a mean tweet. What would he have to do? Like shoot somebody in the middle of Fifth Avenue? I mean, you'd say that's just a mean tweet. What's the big deal? He's just a real estate developer with mean tweets. Is anybody paying attention? I mean, I know some of you are, but it's just. I mean, the American people are not paying attention, and it's just a fascinating phenomenon to me. Hundreds, if not thousands, of examples of why this guy is rotten to the core and why he is destructive to America. And he's just a real estate developer with a mean tweet. He's a gangster who happens to be president. Oh, and Edward says, the media treats him unfairly. Why don't you just say, Yaron, you treat him unfairly? I'm not the media, but what you're really saying is, Yaron, you treat him unfairly. I want you to write that down, Edward. The media treats him unfairly. Who the hell gives a shit about the media? Just say, Yaron Brook treats Trump unfairly. And then I want you to prove it. I mean, Frank, not only is reason, confidence, and certainty, but intellectually, the paradox of knowing what you don't know, to attack man's conceit, any ideas. I don't think, again, I don't think reason is confidence and certainty. Reason is our faculty of being aware of reality and the capacity to integrate that knowledge into abstract concepts. Now, the consequence of reason is confidence and certainty. You gain certainty and confidence about the world. And part of that confidence and certainty is a knowledge of what you know and what you don't know. It's not about man's conceit. It's about man being objective. Man being able to tell what he knows and what he doesn't. What is, I mean, part of that is what is true and what is not, but more importantly is, what do I know? And then what don't I know? And you don't know a lot of stuff. But you're constantly seeking confidence and certainty while recognizing what you know and what you don't know. We know a lot, but there's also a lot we don't know. And of course, all knowledge is contextual. So what we know is only in the context in which we have knowledge. Only then can we achieve confidence and certainty. Enric, what's your favorite restaurant in the San Francisco Bay Area? God, I mean, it used to be Manresa, but it's gone. That was in Palo Alto, not in Palo Alto, that was in Los Gatos. I don't have a favorite right now. I just haven't spent enough time in San Francisco going to restaurants. When I lived in the Bay Area, I wasn't a foodie. And then I haven't spent the time in San Francisco going to great restaurants. But there are great restaurants in the Bay Area, great restaurants in the Bay Area. And I wish I spent more time there to be able to enjoy them and be able to tell. I can tell you my favorite restaurants in Barcelona. Can't tell you my favorite restaurants in San Francisco. That's what it's gotten to. Maribin says, Peter, you know what's brown, but my message is clear. It's a mystery to me. Fender Hopper, the trick is to the conspiracy theorists who killed JFK. JFK was a paid actor whose death was faked to keep the masses scared. Have you seen his body? Your government is lying to you. Oh, you mean that JFK never actually existed? Just like the moon landing never existed, JFK never actually existed. I like it. Not your average algorithm. Using laughs and jokes to evade serious discussion is the strategy of cognitively impotent cowards. Yeah, if it's to evade serious discussion, then absolutely. Arum, action call to like the show and share. Like the show, press the button like. It doesn't cost you anything, and it helps with the algorithm. Really does help with the algorithm. I've been told by YouTube. So please like the show, and don't forget, if you're not a subscriber, please subscribe. Liam, is there anyone other than Rand whose intelligence blew you away? I mean, there are lots of people who intelligence blows you away. I mean, you read. Newton. You read the scientists that. Scientists out there and the discoveries that they make. I mean, you read about CRISPR, you read about Leonardo da Vinci. God, Leonardo da Vinci was an intellect way ahead of his time and on so many things and such a giant. In objectivism, Leonard Peikoff, sure. Leonard Peikoff, super smart, super smart. Andrew, your show can be maddening, which is refreshing when a certain mood, or frightening when in another mood. Usually a mixture of both, maddening and frightening. Maybe that's why I'm not huge. Who the hell wants to be frightened and mad? We need a change. We need a shift. This. I'm frightening and maddening. No, I'm not going to grow that way. Can't get to 100,000 by frightening and maddening people. Jacob, finishing the loop today. 4 interviews down and 1 left to go. I forgot how brutal interviews are. Wish me luck. Yeah, good luck. Not sure what the loop is. I don't know which loop you're finishing today. All right. Esoteric dichotomy, as sad as it would be, is there a point where you would prefer the USA split into different nations, blocks, to be free of a deranged administration? Sure, if there was a block that guaranteed me more freedom. But the split would be so painful and so bloody, it would not go well. It would not go well. It would cause a civil war. I don't want to live through a civil war in the United States. That would be so ugly. Apollo Zeus, will Argentina ever become a laissez-faire paradise? I don't know. It's certainly moving. It's the only country in the world that I know of right now that's moving in the direction of laissez-faire. It's moving in the direction of more capitalism, more freedom, more liberty, and that's a good thing. And it seems like Milei survived the what do you call it, meme coin thing. We will see how far he can progress. We'll see how far he progresses. Catherine says, I visit your course next time you're in Europe. Okay, sorry, I'll miss you this time. Which reminds me, God, I can't believe I remembered. I have 3 places left, 3 last tickets, if you will, to the Living an Egoistic Life, to the seminar I'm giving on March 29th in London. 3 tickets only. They're going to be 14 people plus me, so 15 total. So we're already at 11. Actually 4, 3 or 4. Let's say 3. I think they're 3. So please consider, if you'd really like to come, now's the time to register. Just go to my website, yaronbrookshow.com, and go down to March 29th event in London and register. 3 last tickets to attend. It's a 4-hour seminar in the center of London. It's going to be right near Piccadilly. And we're going to talk all things egoism as applied to your life, how to apply egoism to your life. So sign up as soon as possible, really, because at some point we'll stop taking new registrants because we'll reach our limit. So 3 final tickets, the last ones. Raphael, can you bring Don, Harry, Alex to AirCon Europe? I don't bring anybody to AirCon Europe. That is not my job, not my responsibility, not my authority. I can't even bring myself to AirCon Europe. That is the job of people at ARI. Ask them. Apollo Zeus, is anthropomizing of pets, animals irrational, like creating cute voices for them, etc.? No, I don't see why it's irrational. As long as you know what you're doing, you're playing a game. It's kind of a fantasy, and it's a way to interact with the animal. No, I don't think it's irrational. Tick History would probably really like my course. Yeah, I mean, I hope he might. I mean, I need to write to him. I need to get the time. Maybe tonight I will write to Tick History and let him know about the course and see if he's interested. Andrew, although a lot of crazy things are going on, the problem with the people, a crazy claim, is that it gets people off the hook from evasion too easily, don't you think? Yeah, I mean, when I say crazy, at least I don't mean crazy. I mean, the world is crazy. It's nuts. But we know the cause of that. The cause is evasion. The cause is altruism. The cause is religion. The cause are bad ideas. The world is still infused, dominated by bad ideas. And what we're living through right now, what we're living through throughout, are just a consequence of bad ideas. And that's what we have. All right. Don't forget, those of you in the UK, you want to come to or anywhere in Europe, you want to come to my seminar on living as a rational egoist, then check out yaronbrookshow.com and scroll down to March 29th event in London and sign up. £250. I didn't increase it because, didn't increase it. Kept at that price. Please sign up if you're interested in coming. What else do I want to tell you guys? Thank you to all the super chatters. Great day. Thank you, Troy. Troy, as always, came in, blew the numbers away. Thank you. I will get back to you on the idea for a topic. And I will see you guys sometime next week. Not exactly sure when. Maybe a show on Sunday, maybe a show on Monday, maybe Tuesday. I don't know. It depends on jet lag. It depends on different factors. I will be in London starting on Sunday. I will be there until the following Sunday. When I fly to Edinburgh, I will be speaking at St. Andrews University the following week. And then I go to Israel. I will be in Israel for 5-6 days. And then I will be back here. So shows will be sporadic. They will be dependent on Wi-Fi at the hotel. My hotel in London has good Wi-Fi. We've done a lot of shows from there, so it should be fine. But so there might be, the schedule is going to be difficult, and times are going to be difficult because time zones are shifting, right? So stay tuned. Andrew says again, do you only exist when you're on the air? Come on, this is a deep metaphysical stuff. For you, I only exist when I'm on the air. But for me, I exist all the time. But for you, since I exist only when I'm on the air. I mean, prove I don't exist when I'm not on the air. You can't prove it. I'm kidding. Thank you, Andrew, for ending us on a light note. I will see you all sometime next week. Hope, if you believe in prayer, that Heathrow opens and I can land in Heathrow on Sunday, not on Monday. Not on Monday. Monday would be bad. On Sunday. See you all next week. Bye, everybody.